Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Black Moon Lilith, square opposition or inconjunct one's natal Pluto. Now, when we're talking about transits that involve the Black Moon Lilith, it can be about trauma, the negative manifestation of the sign, nefarious and fixated energy. Now, when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Pluto. Now, I'm going to elaborate on that. When I say basically adverse aspect, okay, squares and oppositions in astrology, of course, those are negative and adverse aspects. So, but the inconjunct is neutral, but a neutral aspect can have good and bad qualities, and coupled with the fact that an inconjunct can often require an adjustment or transition. So basically, collectively, I do see this as an adverse transit. Now, anyway, when transit Black Moon Lilith is basically making an adverse aspect to one's natal Pluto, well, it may manifest in trauma, suffering, the negative manifestation of the sign, and nefarious and fixated energy. This may conflict with power and control at this time. It might be more difficult for you to, it could be more difficulty in controlling obsessive behavior or the negative manifestation of the placement. Say if the transit Black Moon Lilith is in Aquarius, it could be very rebellious, non-conforming, idiosyncratic behavior. And I'm not saying you or someone prominent in your life is going to necessarily be climbing the walls with suction cups on their hands and doing a Spider-Man impersonation, but it can be very radical energy that might be more difficult to control at this time because Pluto is connected with control. It's about power, and it might be more difficult for you to have power in some part of your life, depending on where your natal Pluto placement is, because due to perhaps emotional and or physical trauma and suffering at this time. The thing about it is, if you have your natal Pluto in the 5th house, it could be over love, your romance, your enjoyment at this time. Maybe there's difficulty in power over that, having control over that at this point in time. And also too, Pluto is about transformation as well. So if you're trying to make a major change or transformation in your life, it may be more difficult. Naturally, if you're experiencing something very traumatic, whether it's on an emotional or physical level, it may be harder to make that major change or transformation. If you have the natal Pluto in the 1st house, it could be something with the physical body. Maybe you're deciding to work out vigorously and you're trying to transform the physical body. If the natal Pluto is in the 6th house, it could be some major change and transformation in your diet or health somehow. It can be also too, it's interesting because Pluto is about obsession and fixation as well, like the Black Moon Lilith. The energy is very comparable. Black Moon Lilith energy is very comparable to Plutonian energy. It might be a time where you may simply be more obsessed over what you are obsessed about naturally. Say like in my case, I have the natal Pluto in Virgo in my 5th house, right? I might be, that could manifest in being obsessed and fixated over analytical, intellectual amusement, enjoyment. It could be games that are require certain analysis, whether it might be chess or like a haiku or something like that, or like how I do my some of you may know I have that football NFL prediction channel on YouTube, and maybe I might like to extrapolate sports data. Virgo can be about extrapolation of 5th house associated with sports, but anyway, the point being is you could be overly obsessed with what you're already obsessed about, or it could be something else going on where you're overly obsessed with might be challenging something else that you have a fixation on. And that obviously, if you have that energy transpiring, that could cause a lot of tension and exasperation. It could also be a time too where, since the Black Moon Lilith can be connected with suffering and Pluto is about death, it might be a time where somebody has died, whether it's recent or if it's something well in the past. And, it might be something that might be causing more suffering. at this time, more so than usual. And the thing about it is, it's important during this time and not to be overly fixated or obsessed over a situation of someone passing, because there's nothing that can be done about it. Lamenting over something, for example, I wish I could have done this more for this person when he or she was alive. Those things are not, obviously that's not going to change things or do any good. And another thing too is Pluto is about, not just literal death. It can be about, figurative death, ending something, obliterating something in your life. And if you have the natal Pluto in the seventh house as an example, it could be trying to obliterate or eliminate a marriage situation, divorcing somebody as an example, or trying to eradicate a legal situation. And when you have this transit of the Black Moon Lilith, it could be that if you're dealing obviously with some physical or emotional suffering and trauma, it could make a lot of difference, and it may make it harder, make it more of an arduous task in trying to do so. And it may also be, the Black Moon Lilith is also connected, with powerful enemies, formidable adversaries, and if you're dealing with that at this time, naturally it's going to be harder to do Plutonian things, which can include trying to put an end to something in your life if you have this distraction connected with the Black Moon Lilith. Now, another thing too is that keep in mind the Black Moon Lilith can also be about what may put one in a strong state of fright or trepidation. And when you have this transit, it may make it more difficult if you're trying to resurrect something like a business. Pluto is about rebirth and regeneration. So if you're trying to resurrect something again like a business as an example, it may be more difficult to do so. Or say if you have Pluto, going back to the natal Pluto in the seventh house, it could be a relationship. And a thing about this too, keep in mind, is that Pluto is also about support as well. And whether it's about, the support can be about moral, emotional, monetary support. And when you have the Black Moon Lilith, it might be harder. It might be harder to get that support for physical or emotional trauma. To get it might just be moral support at this time and help you cope with it a little bit better. Or if you need money to take care of a physical injury that's causing you much suffering and putting you in some strong abject misery, it may be more difficult to get the support at this time for that, more so than usual. Now, anatomically speaking, Pluto is connected with the colon, the prostate, the bladder, and the reproductive system. So at this time, if you're dealing with any of these things anatomically I described with the Black Moon Lilith, it may be causing more suffering, more anguish, more emotional turmoil at this time, more so than usual. If you're dealing with a powerful enemy, somebody that's been a thorn in your side, figuratively speaking, naturally dealing with that situation, if it's causing more stress, it could perhaps, at least in theory, maybe doing something to exacerbate the problem that you're dealing with that could be associated with Pluto. In some cases, it could be when you're dealing with something. Pluto is also about trauma as well, like the Black Moon Lilith. In some cases, you can have two physical related injuries, or say problems that are physical related problems that are going on simultaneously, and one maybe exacerbating the other one. So that's another way this transit could manifest. So it's important to just really take care at this time, and as far as any physical related issues may go. And the thing about this too is that Pluto is also about corruption and crime. So if you're trying to do, it might be a time where you might be more obsessed or fixated with criminal profiling, trying to investigate something. And remember, obsessed and fixated energy is not always good, because what happens is it can make you oblivious to other things that may require attention in your life. It's okay to be focused, have single-minded focus on something, but not to the exclusion of everything else going on in your life. And Say if the natal Pluto is in the second house, it could be a monetary crime. Maybe you were burglarized, as an example. If the Pluto's in the fourth house, maybe there was a crime in your home. There's a home invasion and you were robbed in your home, and it's something where you're just at a point where you become very obsessed over that situation. And anyway, hold on a moment, people. Now, another thing too is that Pluto is also connected with viruses, and it can be a time, again, going back to the fact that Black Moon Lilith is connected with what we can be obsessed or fixated over. If you are at this time dealing, with some virus at this time, it might be a time where you might be overly obsessed and fixated with it. If you're dealing with something nefarious in your life at this time, which is Black Moon Lilith, it might be making it harder to deal with that at this point in time, and making it harder to deal with a virus if you are, in fact, if you do have that at this point in time. Now, another thing too is that Pluto is also connected with insurance and tax, things that are tax related. So it can be a time too where it can be a physical or emotional trauma that you're dealing with at this time, maybe making it harder to deal with an insurance related matter, a tax related matter, may make it more taxing, no pun intended, of course. But anyway, and the thing about this too, and if you're dealing with a death, Black Moon Lilith can be connected with death. Naturally, it can cause like a distraction in dealing with Plutonian things, which would include taxes or an insurance related matter at this point in time. Now, another thing too is that Pluto is about shared resources as well. And it may be a time where you might either be overly obsessed or fixated with the shared resources scenario, or it could simply be that it could be dealing with physical or emotional suffering. Might be challenging that at this point in time. Maybe you're dealing with something nefarious that's going on in your life that's affecting you at this point in time, and it could be doing something. Say if the natal Pluto is in the 11th house, it might be some kind of bullying that might be going on online on the internet, as an example. And the thing about this too as well, Pluto is also about desire, and the thing about it is you might not have that desire to be dealing with a physical or emotional trauma at this point in time, which is connected with the Black Moon Lilith, or even if you're dealing with something that you're very afraid of, that may put you in that strong state of fright or trepidation. That is something you might not be desirous of, or really have a passion to do anything about, to deal with it at this time. You might be thinking of throwing it under the proverbial rug, so to speak. Now, anyway, at a time during this transit as well, you might be overly fixated with having power and control at this time. Let's say, for example, if the natal Pluto is in Sagittarius in the 5th house, it could be dealing with reckless or self-righteous, which is Sagittarius, children or lovers, which is the 5th house. It may be more difficult to keep what you want suppressed, which is the Black Moon Lilith, from intimate relationships and shared resources situations, and people that you're involved in a shared resources situation with. And it may be, let's say, for example, if the Black Moon Lilith is in Gemini, transit Black Moon Lilith is in Gemini in the 2nd house. Maybe there was something going on where you had been conniving, which is Gemini, over it could be connected with showing that maybe conniving nature, which is Gemini, in matters that are monetary, which is the 2nd house. Something in the past, that might be something in the past that you were trying to keep under the rug, basically. And it might be also to trauma, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may adversely affect your general passion and desire, which is Pluto. Could be for things And now, let's say if natal Pluto is in Virgo in the 11th house as an example, it could be for very analytical or detail oriented, which is Virgo. It could be astrology, which is connected with the 11th house. Now, also, too, people that are prominent in your life or play a provocative role in your life, which is the Black Moon Lilith, may conflict with you trying to obliterate, which is Pluto, something in your life. Now, let's say, for example, if natal Pluto is in Scorpio in the 7th house, maybe you're trying to end a situation with a jealous or manipulative, which is Scorpio, significant other, which is the 7th house, such as a separation or divorce, as an example. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.